Welcome to the Values Workshop. Uh, I have with me two of my favorite people, Manoj Khatri and John Britton. Welcome to the show and thank you for joining in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Surinder.
Uh, I did mention that I was looking at world peace as a topic of sorts, but I saw a very interesting legend behind a cab. It said the word intizar, and in my head it was running. Intizar basically means waiting, awaiting, and I was thinking, what if we were to tweak it to patiently waiting for world peace kind of thought. And I was looking into my heart in terms of, okay, how patient am I? And uh, there are days and there are days, but there is something that makes me wait, that there is something will break somewhere. Uh, and we might have some sense coming up from leaders, world leaders, uh, company heads. Maybe something is coming from somewhere, and yet when I look around, there is not much to feel optimistic at this point in terms of a rational way of looking at things. So, John, I would want to begin with you. How do you see the present scenario in the world, and uh, can we be patient with it, or is it already too late?
I think we are right in the intersection of multiple centuries-long unfolding crises, and they are all coming towards their climax, feeding off each other at the same time. I would broadly, these are generalizations, but see it as a crisis of the economic systems we live in. The world has gradually become more and more addicted to consumer-based capitalism, and capitalism has become more and more extreme until it is basically a form of exploitative oligarchy, and it is collapsing. That is intersecting with a crisis in any sense of human rights and decency and human dignity. And we see in the world's acceptance of the destruction of people's homelands through war, the way that migrants and refugees are treated in countries all over the world, particularly in the West, whose behavior, Europe, America, Australia behavior is truly despicable in relationship to refugees and migrants. We see inhumanity at extraordinary levels in the way the people of Palestine are being treated and essentially wiped out. And elsewhere, there are inhumanities among outside the West as well, as you are fully aware. There's that crisis. There is an environmental and climate crisis unfolding. These are all intersected crises. And there's an intellectual crisis unfolding, that the pluralism of centuries, where there have been holistic and have been diverse spiritual and intellectual traditions, they are getting crushed by what you might call the colonialism of Western thought, hyper-rationalism, this belief in, unless something can be proven in a scientific laboratory, it doesn't exist. This is also creating a significant intellectual crisis, as Western rationalism, which we can trace all the way back to the Greeks, has become a new religion. And like all religions, when it becomes intolerant, it becomes extremely dangerous. I think all of these crises are unfolding now. The climate is in tremendous trouble. There is mass extinction of animals and plants, and humans have simply lost touch with what it is to be a decent, functioning human. And that's as a result of the economic systems we live in, the intellectual systems we live in, and so on. So I think we're at a time of absolute crisis, and we are at a time where there will be revolution. I don't think there is the slightest chance, however many police states they try to put in place, however much America tries to turn its police force into an army and kill everybody it disagrees with, however this happens, it makes not a damn bit of difference. There is going to be a revolution, and our choice is whether we make that a more peaceful or more violent revolution, and whether we make that a more developmental or a more destructive revolution. Those are the only choices we have left. The status quo is not sustainable. This is fundamentally, there's a lot of generalizations there, but fundamentally, this is my belief.
Okay. Uh, Manoj, that is quite a doomsday prediction, and it is here and now as far as John is concerned. Uh, in this scenario, if you loosely agree with what he's saying, what role does individual agency have, if at all it has any role?
Um, yeah, first of all, I quite tightly agree with him, not just loosely. Uh, yeah, the world seems to have gone a little nuts, especially in the last couple of decades. And a revolution is something that I think is inevitable, as John says. I was just reading somewhere reading or watching somewhere that it just takes about 3% of the people to actually, create a massive and successful revolution.
Oh,
It doesn't really require a lot of people. It doesn't require like a 30-50% population to come together, just 3%, of any particular section of the society for that section to actually undergo a revolution. So, yeah, I guess uh, it's kind of brewing, and bubbling to kind of come out now. And it will happen sooner than later. As far as individual agency is concerned, the choice that John talked about, that whether the revolution will be developmental or destructive, that actually will depend on a lot on the individual agency. And I feel the more of us that we realize that to actually have a revolution that will bring about the positive change that we all want, there will first need to be some level of equanimity within us. If I approach this whole thing as an opposite party, that wrong is being done to me and people like me, then I'm separating myself from what's happening. But when I realize that I'm part of this whole thing and I may have also contributed, and so let me first look at myself and see where am I contributing, and can I actually step back and not really point fingers. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but
of course you are.
not point fingers at the world, because really the world isn't out there as far as I'm concerned. Like, so I live in my world, you live in yours. And somewhere we both happen to kind of see that, okay, this world is going crazy. So can we look at that and say, all right, what are the changes that I'm going to make in myself? What are the changes that I can effect without actually turning despondent, pessimistic, violent? Can I maintain some level of sanity? Because if I'm not sane, I cannot hope to make the world sane. I cannot approach this entire problem, as a problem that's out there.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say, and so that's what the role of personal, I mean, as an individual, that is the role that I will have to play.
Okay, there is I want to bring in one little aspect of what I
Can I
used
just
to.
respond to something in that just really quickly? Because I think there's
Ah,
something so
please,
powerful there. And then please, I don't want to interrupt you, Surrender, but
please.
when you say that we need to avoid that sense of opposition, it's out there, it is being done to me. I agree absolutely. And for me, that's what I mean in some ways when I say the crisis of the Western intellectual tradition, because the Western intellectual tradition has been based absolutely on binaries:
Yes.
body, spirit, us, them. Colonialism became master race, sub race, or white, non white. Um, it became this absolute obsession with it's either me or it's out there. But we are out there. Out there is in us. So we're not able to affect the world unless the world is affecting us. It is a cycle. I think you put it so beautifully, Manoj. For me, it really encapsulates where Western thought or Western or origin thought, which is now a global way of thinking, but the back to
Yeah.
Aristotle and all of those, where it has done amazing things. It's an amazing way of thinking, but it's an oversimplification of a complex world. And we need to start being complex instead of simple. I didn't mean to cut you off, Surrender. I just got very excited by what Manoj was
No,
saying.
that was beautiful. You've added some aspects. So nice that you ended with the oversimplification part. So I have a oversimplified version that I was living with. Also, I want to answer one question that Manoj asked me off the podcast couple of times. Why are others not asking me questions? Because I think I contribute without the question as well. So here is my answer to a question that I asked myself also. Uh, so before you joined in, Manoj, me and John were talking about uh, something that I was saying about pockets of sense. Uh, and in that sense, I've seen individual agencies, some people coming together and doing some work which is very mild in comparison, because the aggression of the West, as John puts it, or aggression of Western thought that is being adopted and adapted and very, very greedily taken up by all of us as a population, world population, not only national. All of us are thinking, if I am not taken care of, then I am under threat, which is not the case. If we are not taken care of, should have been the question, but that is no longer being talked about. And in these small pockets, so when Manoj and Bunty come together, or John and I come together, all three of us to come together in a conversation like this, which may have uh, no, since we are not world leaders of any sorts or any such thing, we are not very important people or very highly placed that people keep on looking at us for this kind of view or guidance. And yet, it is for you and me to come together and talk about topics uh, in an open and honest environment and try and come to some kind of understanding, wisdom uh, that is being put out there uh, in the air, so to speak, because we are all uh, founts of energy of some sort. It's time that we put out what we think. The revolution might actually be within our minds also to start with, because even that is not happening. I have realized there have been a lot of times I have been fearful of putting up a post on social media, because I feel, uh, what if tomorrow somebody finds out or says this? And yet there are days when I feel so uh, as if there is a compulsive need to say something about the subject or share something, because if I don't say it, then what is the use of my life if I am not standing up for what I believe is right? And that kind of takes over the fear of, whatever, call it mortality if you want to, because these days anything can happen anywhere, uh, as far as our country is also concerned. So my point is that as an agency, we are also together, like Manoj put it, and we need to use these little small networks and talk about what we believe is right and come out with it and see if 3% is all it takes. This gives me a lot of hope. Suddenly I feel so charged up. Even before I started the conversation, I wasn't. 3%, I said, okay, there is a possibility that this might happen. And it might happen in a manner that is uh, not detrimental to our future. So there is another question that I want to ask. One of the things that I feel very, very strongly about compared to where I stand today in my age vis-a-vis when I grew up, there was a lot of nature around me and trees and gardens and uh, greenery, and one spent a lot of time in and around those places. Day before I met somebody who was a very intelligent guy and he was very down and he called me and he wanted some to talk about his issues. One of the suggestions I gave him, I said, look, you live in a place where there is a forest like area, why don't you go spend more time there? Uh, these places are now becoming extinct almost. Like in cities, at least in the place where I stay, uh, every second day I find in some road or something, because it is obstructing the traffic, they just go on cutting it without having an option or doing anything about it. And we are just watching and there is nothing happening. Uh, Manoj, do you think as simple as this could be one of the starting points of bringing some kind of peace, some kind of calmness to the locales that we are inhabiting?
Um, mm, I'd say that while you were talking about this, I was just thinking, what can I really do? Can I actually prevent the trees from, being cut? Um, do I have the time, the energy, the resources, the network that will be required to undertake something of that kind of an initiative? Or can I do something else? Can I say, all right, these are the things that they are doing. What can I do positively? How many trees can I keep on planting? And what can, so there is this, for instance, a friend of mine told me about an initiative called 14 trees or something like that, which is there somewhere an hour from here, from Pune. And it started, as a very small initiative, but now they have acres and acres of thing, and people kind of gift trees to others, so it's getting funded like that, and it's become a massive project now. So I saw a small sort of video clip, and I was quite impressed with how it has shaped up now. So that's a positive way of approaching the problem, because I know if I'm going to try and oppose, uh, it might backfire, because there are quite a number of vested interests, who wouldn't let that happen. It's not that they don't understand the importance of trees, but they do have something much more important for, which they think is more important in their view and their
Yeah.
opinions. So that's how this goes on. And I think, if I look at everything what's happening around the world and look at how can I bring a more clarity and more compassion to the world, by being compassionate myself, of course, but by making others see, how compassion or love and all of these things are actually so much more important than. So we've kind of veered away from the values uh, of what the East stood for, like John mentioned, So we want to bring the focus back to those things. There's great power in all of those things. But we seem to have forgotten, because there's so much noise out there about, and the influencers and like John mentioned, the consumerism that's kind of swept us, completely. It's like, it's everywhere, and and there's so much stimulus all around that, our brains don't really even have the opportunity to breathe and take a pause and think about our real priorities. We just cannot think about it anymore because we are completely inundated with, you know, the tech, which is, which has a good part, which is what is happening right now. We are using it today.
Yeah.
But the flip side of it is that it's taken us on the wrong path in this sense. So I think what we can do is try and bring that using the same technology, try and like the way you're right now doing, for instance, bring back as much sanity as possible. So the thing is, it just brings me back to the thing. It's 3% of the population, but go back further and you realize that that whole scientific theory, the chaos theory, where even a flapping of a butterfly can actually cause a thunderstorm or whatever in another part of the world. I think that's how change begins, right? Rosa Parks, for instance, that's how the change begins. It starts with a small incident, Gandhi's small incident, and then from there something happens and there's a huge shift in consciousness. We don't know how it's going to take place, so we don't want to control that. We're going to do whatever we can, what I can, what you can. That's the best we can do. If I'm going to say, all right, let me see if my effort is going to make a change and I'll try to measure all of that, I think we are going, in a deep black hole, really. It's a rabbit hole and we'll never really come out of it. That's not something we can do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason why I think activism doesn't work.
In your head.
So that's my
Yeah.
See, that's
This
where
is wonderful.
I agree with you a long way on that, and then I disagree. Because you mentioned Rosa Parks, who was, of course, engaged in activism.
yes.
The
But it
suffragettes
started with
who,
why I mentioned Rosa Parks. Even Mahatma Gandhi was engaged in activism, but it started
yeah,
in one place, and then after
yeah.
that, it took over its own, life of its own. So we don't know how. Maybe I will become one
So
in that
you're
sense. But activism from the point of view of just activism, rather
It
than
seems
being inspired to do something.
it seems to me that uh, it feels a little bit like what I would experience when I was improvising as a performer. What is
Okay.
possible for me right now in this context, in this moment? There's no point in trying to force something to happen. When you're improvising, you need to respond to what's happening.
yeah.
And sometimes that means taking center stage and saying, yo, look at me. And sometimes it means being in the background and saying, yo, look at her or look at him. Sometimes it means shutting up and letting other people do things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it means being very forceful. Sometimes it means being extremely patient. What can you do today, and what you can do today might be different to what you could do yesterday or what you can do tomorrow. And I think that the whole sweep of action, from closing your eyes and meditating in a darkened room when nobody knows what you're doing, through to loud, in your face, confrontational activism, all of those are useful strategies for us to employ in trying to create a better world. At the moment in the UK, I'm not in the UK, but I still follow the news there because I'm still a British citizen. In the UK, the government, with all its vicious little right-wing populism, has just turned the Palestine Action Group into a terrorist organization. I mean, it's absurd. They are people protesting against genocide, usually by holding up signs, and they've now been equated to terrorists, which means if I say on British soil I support Palestine Action, I can be imprisoned for up to 14 years. I mean, this is draconian. But there are now elderly religious figures. There's an old woman who's a priest who's 83 years old who has just got herself arrested for standing silently holding a sign saying, I support Palestine Action. That's a brave act of activism, which is revealing the obscene absurdity of the British government. And I want to applaud and validate that just as much as I validate the person who's having a quiet conversation with somebody else and trying to convince them, or just drawing a picture or having a conversation. I kind of want to say, what are you able to do today? And it is not for me to judge or say what I think is effective for other people. If what you can do today is to go break into an airbase and paint a warplane bright pink, you go for it, my friend. You go for it. If that's what you are up to today and you're willing to take those consequences. If what you can do today is just say, I'm going to put a post on Facebook, then that's cool. Where I think this becomes dangerous is when people, and I see this very much as a Western phenomenon, but maybe you also see this very much in India. I don't know because I don't follow things on social media as much in India as I do in the West. You see people who go, change has to be personal, the change has to come from within. So, in the face of all this conflict, I'm just going to have a bit of me time and work on myself. And I go, that's not about change, that's just narcissism. That's just you going, I want to look like I'm a good person, but I'm going to do absolutely nothing to affect any change in the world. I'm going to give myself a holiday by the beach because I'm feeling really stressed and I must be the change I want to see in the world, or some nonsense like that. So I think it is incumbent on each of us to be rigorous in saying there are infinite ways to try to create change in the world, infinite numbers of ways. But let's not fool ourselves that, just doing something and saying that you're doing something is the same as actually doing something. Sometimes we've got to get out there, out of the comfort zone, and have the difficult conversation. Or, as you say, Surinder, sometimes put the post on Facebook that you feel has to be put up there, even though some people will be upset by it. It is taking that difficult step, taking responsibility. There's a quote from the American theatre director Anne Bogart, which I love, which is very simple. She says, "Revolutions begin in small rooms." And I think there is such power in that sense of having the small conversations, but revolutions don't end in small rooms. They end in activism. They end in people actually on the street turning the system on its head and turning it into something better. And there's one other thing I just want to pick up on for something you said, Surinder, which I think is really interesting. This idea of we become so individual. We go, if we are, if I'm not being taken care of, there's a problem. I think part of what we need to be challenging in this time is the notion of I, as opposed to I am always part of us, that I'm never isolated, I'm always part of a connection. And humans are always part of an ecosystem. That our indigenous forebears, or the few indigenous cultures that are still thriving around the world, they know that if you care for a tree, it is just as valuable as caring for a human. They know that the wolf or the tiger contains a spirit of a human. That they're your ancestors or your dream brothers or whatever. All different cultures have different languages for what we're talking about, spirit animals, whatever. They know that we are a tapestry. It's not humans and nature. It's not me and you. The whole thing, including the rivers, the air, the whole thing is us. And somebody who goes and into, you asked if, going into the forest is a good thing. Yes, super good. You're going to talk to your relatives. It's like going to sit with your family, but your family happen to be trees and birds, as opposed to the family that happens to be uncles and aunties. We are always within our family. And they always say, you should care for your family. Yeah, well, the trees are my family. The birds are my family. The cats, the dogs. You're my family. But, my mother-in-law downstairs, who's old and elderly, she's my family. I need to care for all of them however I can today.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with you, Manoj, that unless I am also caring for myself, then I can't do that. But not, I'm going to care for myself, therefore I don't have to give a damn about anyone else. I care for myself so I can care for the world. I care for the world because it's part of caring for myself. And so we live in this continual conversation. It's just a conversation we have with the world.
Yeah.
So, just a little clarification there. When I was mentioning activism, what I meant by it is, when people who end up only opposing things, not really doing anything positive from their side. So whether it
Yeah.
was Rosa Parks or Mahatma Gandhi, these are the examples I give. There are, of course, others, Nelson Mandela and others, These people, they did not just oppose. They say, what is the solution that we have? What are we bringing to the table? What can I do? And that's something that's inspired. That's an inspired action that we are, and that's the only thing that'll work. And I know a lot of people, especially on Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook activism, which is why I completely stopped logging onto it now. And I saw a lot of people who were armchair activists, and they would constantly share things which would create a lot of,
Depression.
unease. I mean, you don't want to do that. You want to say, all right, yes, there is a problem, and I see, but this is what we can do about it. Can we all think about how do we resolve this? See, we already know what the problems are. I mean, sane people, they already know kind of what the problems are. And John summed it up beautifully. All the issues that, that the world is facing currently. And we kind of have a sense of, yeah, things are not okay. Everything is in a mess. Your healthcare is in a mess. Education is in a mess. Everything. I mean, look at whatever, capitalism has really taken over all aspects of human life. And value systems have really been kind of completely neglected, ignored. And so that was my idea, that it's not about
Yeah.
uh, not doing and not getting together and doing things, but not doing it for the sake of doing, because then you just become an opposition. Then you are only an opposing force, and you're not really bringing it. It's only going to increase the tension, the friction is only going to increase further, because you're not really finding a solution. You're just saying those people are wrong, which is what I started with, when I said
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you want to just point fingers and say they are wrong, let's kill them, or let's eliminate them, or let's, get them out of power. That's not the solution.
It's not the solution.
If I get, that particular person out of power, somebody else similar will replace him. I don't want to be opposing an individual. I want to be opposing the thought process. And how do I oppose the thought process? By bringing another thought process that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I,
think that's
I
so
have a
right.
point here. In fact, I think John spoke the same things in a different
Yeah,
language, but he
exactly.
was saying the
So
same
I
thing.
just thought I should just clarify that
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
what my idea was.
There is a very simple thing that happened a couple of days back. There is another organization where there are a lot of seekers, let's put it this way, where there is a lot of turmoil happening right now, even as we speak. And me and another friend were talking. He's part of that organization, and there is some turmoil happening there. He said everybody who's opposing everybody wants to just tell themselves, I am right. There is nobody who's willing to listen, or even, and they are all following a leader who stands for peace and goodness and calmness and equanimity and everything. And all of them have forgotten what has been prescribed in scenarios. These scenarios have been predicted, the solutions have been put in print, everybody is simply supposed to follow. But right from the first person to the last person in the entire chain, everybody is talking these things. And in fact, this has been going on for several months now. So when initially he and his wife were talking to me about this, and I thought they were being idealistic, I told him, I said, there has been a pattern. Initially, I thought you were being very idealistic. Then I thought, okay, you are not taking it for the world is like this. It is practically always going to be conflict, no matter what you are talking about. And something. And yesterday it was so. When we had this talk we were talking for an hour and a half about this, and I said it makes me so sad because all of this started your individual journey of joining something. So my idea of starting the podcast remains my compass. Okay, what am I going to talk about? I am going to talk about authentic feelings that I am going through, and I will invite others also who are willing to do so on camera. things which are difficult to talk about. And that is it. There is no more to it or there is no less to it. And it is to give strength to people who may not be able to do the same thing as we are doing. And same thing that started there one by one, all of them have spent years and some of them are 80 plus. So he's saying now they are realizing they haven't got anything to show for their efforts. So now the fight has become more about I. John mentioned it so eloquently that I is a part of us, and unless we accept this, it's not going to happen. And it's just crumbling in a very, very, very bad manner. And things are being said and done in a manner which is completely unacceptable, which is where your activism part comes in, because it is now individual versus individual that has come up. John, you wanted to say something.
It's in some ways, if in almost all of these crises that we're facing, if we were ever as a people to step back far enough and look at what we were doing, we would roll our eyes and go, we're being so stupid, let's just stop. Let's just stop doing this. Just as, we might be able to step back from the organization you're talking about and go, what are you doing? For heaven's sake, stop it. It's ridiculous. But to be able to step back like that and to observe oneself requires humility, and it requires a sense of giving away your individual self-importance. I must defend myself. And I think that it's all very well to say, we should all learn to be humble. Yeah, we haven't managed it so far over the last few millennia. I don't think we're about to do it this week. What we can begin to do, and again, indigenous cultures are so in advance of us in this understanding, is to understand that it is not possible to think of this being about me against you, because I am always part of you. I can't say it's me against you, because that's the same as saying it's me against me, because you are me and I am you. And I can't say it's me against nature, because nature is me and I am nature. It asks us to go through a fundamental, well, it's rethinking, but it's also going back to a deeper level, an older understanding of what it is to be in the world. And this isn't a surprise, because the indigenous cultures, we might think they're very old. No, they're the cultures that grew up over 30 or 40,000 years of living in the world. Our culture has grown up over 200 years of industrialization. We are cultural babies. And we are like bad-tempered, squalling infants having a tantrum. Whereas many indigenous cultures, they are carrying with them wisdom, which is simply the embodied, lived wisdom of millennia of experience. Now, there's great things about industrialism. I completely agree, Manoj. We're talking and all of these things. It's magnificent. But fundamentally, we're babies. Intellectually and spiritually, we have become babies. We have been infantilized by the systems we live in. And it's time we grew up. And that means stopping thinking about me, 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 and realizing that me is part of us. I cannot oppose you because you are me. I am changed by you and I change you. I am changed by the tree outside my window and it changes me. I change it because I care for it. It changes me. Everything. It's a fundamental shift or return to an understanding of how to be in the world. And my feeling, and this is purely a, unprovable personal feeling, but that shift is the heart of beginning to address all of the crises that we've been talking about. The ecological crisis, the nationalism crisis, the intellectual crisis, the economic crisis. We need to move away from this tantrum-based idea of I want my way and I don't care who I trample on to get it. Countries have got to stop thinking that. different, skin colors or nationalities have got to stop thinking that. Humans have got to stop thinking that in relationship to, oh, this tree is in the way, knock it down. No, this tree damn well lives here. It's got as much right to be there as you've got a right to be where you are. And this is the fundamental shift.
This is so beautiful. Uh, in fact, the idea that something big or something revolutionary has to be done, uh, like very nicely put by Manoj as well, if it is always in opposition, uh, it's always going to create a bit of unrest within me. And if I come with my restlessness, I can't give you peace. This this sort of being patient is also a bit of uh, arrogant approach, I would think. Oh, I am waiting for you to wisen up. Maybe I just need to accept that you are here and this is your point of view. How about me setting an example? Uh, with all due respect to what John put up, that like if 80 years old people are coming out with placards on the streets, I think it is both a blessing and a curse. The curse is that how have we brought the world to this situation? And the blessing is that they are not letting go. They are allowing their wisdom to show up where it matters and where it is making news, and we have to acknowledge that this is happening. And this is a beautiful part because all said and done, whatever I start to know also becomes part of me. So if 10 years down the line we still have certain issues that we are dealing with, we have people at 80 who've come out and did this. Why can't we do this at 60 or 70, whatever our age is at that point of time are? I think we are running out of time here, but this has been a beautiful uh, change of mind, if I were to use that term, because when I started, I was feeling a little constricted by my thoughts about what is happening in the world. And when John put it so specifically that we have this kind of crisis and this kind of crisis and this kind of crisis, and suddenly it looked like, oh man, the weight of the world is on our shoulders. And yet, now that I realize the most important word in that line is our shoulders, not my shoulders. So maybe I just need to relook and say, okay, let's together try and figure out what can be done. But I don't want to end with my last words. Today I want John and Manoj, both of you, to end this episode the way you think. What are your parting thoughts on this subject?
Manoj, I want to pick up on something you said because I think it is so important and so it speaks to really what I think is most important. The notion of binary thinking, of oppositional thinking, of in Marxist terms, you might think of thesis and antithesis and so on. It's inevitable, and sometimes it's useful. That sometimes that you need to simply go, no, this is wrong. This must be opposed. Before we can find some progress, this must stop. Like we think of Gaza, what's happening in Gaza must stop now. And then we can find the way forward. You can't say, well, we can't stop what's happening in Gaza until we've got a vision for the future. No, they need to stop killing kids now. So that opposition is sometimes essential. This tree must not be cut down now. All of those things. I really absolutely agree and deeply value your perspective that how I'm reading your perspective, that the oppositional, while it may occasionally be necessary, is short term and might well cause as much damage as it solves, or can ultimately cause as much damage as it solves. When we find ourselves drawn towards that sense of opposition, which can also, as you suggest, Surrender, be a little bit self-righteous. Oh, I'm enlightened and you're not. I'm waiting for you to catch up. I really value the question, this person who I am opposing, in what ways do they believe that they are right? in what ways do they believe that they are actually morally in advance of me? In what ways do they and I share desires and agendas and perspectives, though we might have different strategies? Like the person who goes, I want to build this road and I'm going to knock down this forest because I want economic development for these rural communities. And I might disagree with all of that, but we all want the rural communities to have a better life. So, in what are our shared agendas? The left, which I've always sort of identified with, the left has the most appalling, stupid ability to create enemies out of allies. You know, there's two people who almost agree on everything and they find some ideological reason to hate each other. The left is appalling at building alliances. And if we want our 3% to come together to make the revolution, it is not going to be, it's not going to be 3% of people who all agree with each other. It's going to be 3% of people who value difference, value diversity, and understand they have a shared vision and that they're going to have to put up with some stuff in that vision that they don't like. There's going to be some stuff they go, I wouldn't have chosen that, but together we're building something and it's not about me. It has to be something that embraces everyone, even those people I dislike or somehow feel I'm morally superior to. So that sense that you have of opposing binaries, I value it so very strongly, but it's also mature. And we are drawn, particularly by social media, towards tantrums and childish behavior.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
Manoj.
completely agree. I completely agree. And you actually, said a lot of things that I've been, I had wanted to say during the conversation many times about, taking the other people's point of view or trying to understand them. All of those things are very important. But there's one more thing I feel that we probably don't have much time to discuss that now, but maybe at another podcast, another session we could, is that we could go back to finding out where did we go so wrong. And because the point is that at the end of it, why is it that there is so much friction? And I think we depend a lot on intellect, we depend a lot on language, we depend a lot on communication that is so fallible, that is so inefficient. And so we've forgotten that there's so much more that can happen without all of this, the action and the silence and a lot of other things that we can bring back into the mix, which then will make this a lot more potent, combination, a potent recipe for certain changes that we all want, and not just rely on those traditional things which everybody else is using. Let's do this, maybe be more articulate or use more clever phrases and stuff. That's not what. There's value for silence. There's value of things which we've forgotten, and even positive action. Those things is something that I think there's not much emphasis given to all of these things. So I thought that's something that we could bring into the mix, apart from everything that John said, which I completely second.
Yeah, thank you so much, John and Manoj. This has been a fascinating conversation. I think we shall reconnect, if possible, take this forward, or maybe have a new topic, or talk more about the world. Of course, there are things that can be continued on what Manoj has said, positive actions and the value of silence. Uh, but wonderful, wonderful speaking to you, and what a beautiful world it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to you
Thank you,
both.
John.
Thank
It
you.
was really nice. Thank you.